Alright guys, I fancy doing some proper VOD analysis of like a full game, and since this has been my favourite game of the tournament so far, I thought where better to start than here. I feel like the Apex teams in general, because they've refined themselves to such a degree, they have a much easier to observe style about them. So they seem to have a plan going into every fight, they execute it in similar ways. You can really kind of pick them apart a little better in terms of understanding what they're aiming for and showing it to other people. So this is the semi-final of Apex between AF.Blue and Lunatic-Hai. Just doing the first map at the moment, Nepal. I'll go on to the other maps later, but the other maps are quite significantly different in that Lunatic-Hai runs their Sombra composition in those, and it has a pretty substantial effect on how the fights play out. In this one, however, what it's important to note right off the bat is that this is not the Lunatic-Hai that you've seen in the past season. Even before that, they've quite considerably changed their style since Who Are You has been on his punishment, his penalty leave, whatever he's done, insulted the coach's daughter or something. That's not true. It might be true, who knows. But now that they've got Guido in the team and Esker's playing the soldier, they are almost always, I mean, neither of them play the Genji. Guido tried to play the Genji when Who Are You first got replaced from the team, but he's not good with it to the point where you would actually want him to play it in a composition. So this is, for all intents and purposes now, a very, very defensive Lunatic-Hai. They like to play, yeah, defensive is the best word for it. Esker's got very passive positioning, but plays a very good passive Soldier 76. Guido is playing a shutdown tracer, as in he's playing passive positioning and shutting down flanks from other players. And then he's going to also focus down the tanks on the enemy team whenever he can, and use his pulse bombs for those as well. Rather than, I mean, the classic different style of tracer is somebody like AF.Blue or Saya Player or Arhan here as well, although they don't play very much tracer, but they do for this map, where you play around the back and your aim is to try and pick off the back line or catch people in bad positioning or turn people's eyes away, and then the rest of your team can approach from the front. Lunatic-Hai have got two very defensively positioned hit scan heroes here, and the style that Lunatic-Hai are now running is that they have a very strong backline in Jaehong, Toby and Esker, in that Esker's positioning is very passive, so he's able to help them both out, and both Jaehong and Toby, whilst they don't have the unbelievable positioning, like absolutely completely tight between themselves all the time, their individual play is so good, and they understand where each other's going to be so often, that they are actually an excellent backline, and they can play it very aggressively as well, whereas other duos or trios wouldn't actually be able to get away with that. So, and then the idea for Zumba and Miro is basically, in this iteration of Lunatic-Hai, when they're playing with this roster with Guido, is that they're going to be counter jumping onto the enemy tanks. So it's not the case. If you guys want to look at the style of AF.Blue and how they want to play, and how they want to play is quite different to how they played in the rest of this fixture once Lunatic-Hai introduced the Sombra, but on this map is fairly similar to how they normally play, actually. If you want to see a breakdown on that, I did a detailed review of the style of AF.Blue and how they enjoy playing, how they want to play, how they want to approach a match. The idea of that is that they do have these very tight trio at the back of Recry, Lucid and IDK, very tight positioning, individually not as mechanically skilled as Jaehong and Toby, don't play as aggressively whatsoever, very defensive play, and AF.Blue as a team in general like to bait the dive into them, tie up the aggressors with their backline, or possibly even beat them with their backline, because they have such good coordination between the three of them, and the peel from Donghyun. And then Mano and Arhan in general go on a counter dive themselves, just the two of them onto the back line, and they end up getting picks like that. And that doesn't work at all when you're playing against a defensive team, because you can't be reactive. You can't throw a counter punch if nobody's throwing the first punch against you. And Lunatic-Hai took away that option for them completely. So this counter dive really doesn't come in that often from AF.Blue, but then forced into being the aggressors, or occasionally they get an opportunity to run a kind of counter dive. But you'll see that Miro and Zumba very much play more like Luxury Watch Blues tanks played, where they're looping back onto their own backline to try and defend against the enemy tanks. Okay, so it started out on Nepal, and I'm pretty sure that the whole reason that Esker isn't running the Sombra on these maps as well is that they're very spammy on control. It's difficult to get behind. The tempo of the game is much higher. You can't really rely on EMPs. The packs aren't in great placement. It's not as good on Nepal for control. Of course, it can be phenomenal on certain control maps if the health kits are positioned in such a way, or there are fights that pan out like that, but Nepal is not a good map for it in general. So they're running with this double hit scan composition. Oops, I'll mute the casters, because although it was lovely insight, it's not what I want to hear. Okay, so here's the first fight of it. So both teams start setting up. Lunatic-Hai are very defensive here. They're just kind of spamming. Guido gets a bit of early position, and I think Miro's just dipped back into that side passage as well. So it's defensive. It's getting ready for the dive to come in from AF.Blue. In no situation is Miro then going to pop his head out and try and actually initiate the dive. Lunatic-Hai are setting up their positions to defend here. They're kind of digging themselves in. So AF.Blue realize this. They're going to go on the dive. You know, they're not too bothered about going aggressive themselves. You can see that Arhan's got a little bit of a flank up going on this left-hand side as well. So he'll be able to come in. You just saw Mano dip down, and then he's going to be able to jump up at the back, be able to start to aggress this back line. These guys, the aim then is that ideally what Lunatic-Hai, what AF.Blue want to happen is that Lunatic-Hai then try and send a counter punch onto them, and Lucid, ITK and Recry are able to deal with Miro and Guido. But Lunatic-Hai don't play like that, and so instead Miro and Esker mainly, and Zumba as well, are going to curl round back this way, and they're going to jump back onto... So here comes Donghyun, Mano and Arhan are in there. Arhan, I think, recalls after this. He kind of just got caught up in the mess. He was aiming just to flank at the same time as Mano jumps. Donghyun's there just to matrix them both and make sure that they don't take damage when they dive. And you see that immediately, obviously Jaehong turns around because he's got to help Toby out. Zumba turns around to peel, and Miro is going to jump back at this point as well. And Esker starts running through as well. So like you can see this very passive, or not passive, very defensive reaction coming out of Lunatic-Hai. Now if this was AF.Blue on the other side, then you would, if someone aggresses into AF.Blue for the whole of this tournament, for the whole of this season of Apex, they've actually just been sending counter dives into the enemy team and relying on their backline to like trade evenly with the divers, stuff like that. So big difference in style here, and this is how Lunatic-Hai now play without Who Are You in the roster. It's a very defensive team with an amazingly talented backline and tanks, and the DPS players just kind of slot in and excel at their role. Very role-playing DPS players. Okay, so AF.Blue actually get a decent initiation off here. Mano's taking quite a bit of damage, but his shield's down. He's got decent peel coming out from Donghyun as well. Arhan's kind of would have been better if he'd gone through there, so that he's not attacking from the same area as Mano, if he'd been able to get around the side. But instead, he's just attacking from there. But there's a possibility of making something happen here, and this is their short window where they have to make something happen. Get a lot of damage onto Jaehong and Zunba, so this isn't going too badly for them. But one of the problems here as well is that Donghyun's had the Harmony Orb on him the entire time rather than Mano. I'm really not sure why Lucids decide to prioritize Donghyun in this situation rather than Mano. Whereas Miro's got the orb on him instead. And in general, I think when you're diving or counter diving, your Winston should probably be the main focus, because your Winston kind of decides at what point you have to disengage, or if your Winston dies, that's pretty disastrous. So you can see here that Mano takes a ton of damage. Donghyun's depleted his defense matrix at this point. Donghyun's still getting healed up from that. And the backline from AF.Blue, because they play passively, aren't really in a position to deal with this. Mano then has to jump backwards, because the entirety of Lunatic-Hai is shooting at him, and he wasn't able to convert that kill onto Jaehong or Zumba. And Arhan wasn't quite in a position to be able to deal with it. And he gets back. Mano's on about 5 health. For whatever reason, still doesn't receive the harmony or be able to get into the healing aura of IDK. And actually goes down to a little bit of spam from Toby there. And they're able to take this one forward, despite the fact that Arhan got a decent clip onto Eska. He basically gets booped away by Toby, who's playing like this aggressive, defensive Lucio, which he absolutely excels at. And they're able to basically just take this fight off the back of being able to pick Mano. Like, as soon as your Winston is down, it's such a huge advantage, because then you've got the solo tank diva, which instantly gets demech'd as soon as the defense matrix is down, and then they just kind of leave the backline, because they know that AF.Blue's backline is so passive that they don't really have to deal with that threat. As long as they've neutralized the 2 tanks, there's not too much of a problem. And again, Guido just playing like that, like one-on-one man marking tracer. So there's another fight here. After this one, Lunatic-Hai win it. There's another fight as well, and then AF.Blue managed to capture the point, and it's 99-0. And I'm just going to skip forward here to the next really interesting fight, which is around here. So you can see that AF.Blue actually managed to recap when it was 99-0. Lunatic-Hai ended up getting off the point, and both of the support ults are pretty much going to be live for both teams here as well. And as you can see here, oops, there we go. So Lunatic-Hai are engaging, and AF.Blue have got really passive position. They're kind of letting them in. They're not holding close in any sense. They're holding really far back with control of the point here. And I think that's partly because IDK hasn't generated his ultimate at this point, and they realize that they're down in terms of the support ults, but he'll have it up at some point for the next one. But this is amazing, this next play, because they move around the left hand side here, and they use their sound barrier to engage. So Toby's just about to use the sound barrier here, and whether or not they even know they have this window of opportunity is kind of a moot point, because the play here isn't to try and take advantage of the fact that they have this like 15% window. The play instead, if you've watched my AF.Blue video, you'll know that I said repeatedly that Mano likes to hide before he engages. So he likes to hide and go for a counter engage. He doesn't like to sit in the front line and rotate with his diva. They leave Donghyun as like the primary tank for the team when they're playing defensively, when they're on defense. And in this situation, they're kind of on defense, right? So they sit Donghyun back, he soaks up the defense matrix, like baits the team forward, and then Mano gets a really good engage onto the back, and he hasn't taken any damage. But I don't know how, whether it was VOD review or something, but look how quickly they identify where Mano is here, and just instantly got onto him. Look at this engage from Lunatic-Hai. I have no idea how they know that Mano is here. But boom, just straight away, they're over here, and there's Mano. Mano is hiding behind this wall, looking for a good counter engage on the back left after AF.Blue had, after Lunatic-Hai had gone there. AF.Blue's sound barrier in with Toby, Eska, Miro, and Jaehong stays around kind of the high ground on the left. And Guido and Zumba go straight for Mano and put tons of damage on him while he's away from the rest of his team. And this must be a VOD review from either scrims or watching AF.Blue's matches, and they know that when they play Nepal, Mano hides down there. And so they've instantly got onto him. They put him at half health immediately, and he's forced to pop out the Primal Rage at the same time as Lucid is forced to reply to the sound barrier with his Transcendence, and then IDK is also forced to reply to Jae-Hong's sound barrier, so he then pops off the sound barrier here. And so from what should have been an advantageous situation for AF.Blue, with Lunatic-Hai having to engage into them, they read the situation so well and knew where Mano was somehow, that they put so much pressure on him immediately, and they've managed to force out like a great engagement for themselves, where if anything they're slightly ahead. So that was just absolute genius. Just look at how quickly they do it as well. They don't give Mano any idea that they know where he is until they're already on top of him. They're in, and Zumba and Guido look like they're going forwards, and then instantly they just turn to the right and they're all over him. And there's no way that Mano knows that's coming at all. So he has to pop his Primal Rage and get out of there. And in the midst of this fight, it's pretty even at the moment. Both teams have exchanged 2 support ults each and the Primal Rage. And AF.Blue, kind of classically, their style as well, with this counterpunch coming out from Mano and Arhan, is to focus the enemy's support line. So they're going for Jae-Hong and Toby. That doesn't work so well when they're up against really individually talented supports. And Lunatic-Hai's idea to focus the front line of AF.Blue ends up working far better over the course of the series. Because they just, the AF.Blue trio at the back, this back line is really powerful, but they just leave it alone. They don't even fight it. And they know that they can't help that much because they play it quite defensively. So Lunatic-Hai here focus Mano and Arhan. So Mano, as soon as he comes out of Primal Rage, gets focused down really hard, but Mano's already killed both of their support ults. So here's the difference in styles. Again, Mano going for the supports, but Lunatic-Hai focused down Arhan and Mano, who both die. And Esker manages to build his ult very quickly because he was focusing down Mano that whole time. So he's actually doing more damage because he's shooting at the tank rather than trying to take down supports. Ends up generating his ultimate quite considerably faster than Recry, pops it off and gets both supports, and then manages to demech Donghyun. He comes in at the same time as Guido and Miro, who've been able to split off individual targets around here and here, and they leave Guido on the point to cap and regain control of the capture point. So there's a lot of awareness coming out from Lunatic-Hai here as well. They know that they want to focus the front line. It gives Esker the advantage in terms of ultimates. They manage to pick off individual people by throwing Miro into them at the end, and focusing them down with Guido as Esker respawns. And they manage to get the cap. So now AF.Blue, from being in a great position, are having to play into overtime where they need to keep somebody on the point the whole time. And there's a big problem here with Mano's play, because he comes forward, Donghyun and Mano come back into the fight. This is perfectly fine, you know, they get a decent engage, they onto the point, pop down their bubble as well. So they've got a decent position here. Arhan's with them as well. So the aggressive trio of AF.Blue is setting up behind here. You know, a great position to play in around, like, I always think of it as the altar room. I don't know what the pros actually call this room, like behind here. I think they probably just call it secret or something boring like that. But the misplay here from Mano is really quite disastrous, especially when they're in overtime. Mano pokes his head out of here. He doesn't realise that Zumba's just about to come around this corner and thinks that it's kind of only Toby around there. And Guido's behind him as well. And look at this. There's 4 people shooting Mano. And Donghyun has looped up top, I think, to try and chase Guido for whatever reason, or like pressure him out. Or maybe even to take the health kit up here. I'm really not sure what Donghyun's doing up there, but I'm also not sure what Mano's doing in this little cubby hole, because he just gets focused down by 4 people just instantly. Like, he's just dead. There's nothing that he can do. At the same time as that happens, if we just rewind a little bit, so this is them getting the engage and playing around in secret. Arhan actually comes around the back, so Arhan was in there. There's Arhan now, zips through there, and he's going to come behind and try and pressure Jae-Hong. He starts to damage him now, gets him really weak, almost manages to kill him, but Jae-Hong turns around and gives him a headshot. That was a good pause, actually. Gives him a headshot with a right click, manages to hit him with one of the things, and then Miro, again, playing passively with the rest of his team, manages to finish off Arhan. And that's just, the fight is over at that point, and they lose the first round off the back of the first fight not quite being able to take it because they didn't have the heals in the right place. I think, you know, they get a decent engage with Mano, they realize that they have to take the initiative. AF.Blue take the initiative, they get a decent engage out, but Mano takes too much damage early on and doesn't have the heals with him, and if they keep Mano alive there, they're probably going to be able to win the fight even if he's really weak, because they got that pick from Arhan onto Esker. But because they don't keep him alive, it kind of, the next couple of fights snowball. By the time they've got it again, it's at 99% for Lunatic-Hai, and then they have that amazing re-engage where they jump back in and get and find Mano when he's just hiding in secret all alone, which I assume is just based on some VOD review, like real intelligent awareness of where their enemies are going to be and the style that they play. So if we have a look at the next round, if we skip forward a bit to here, this is the beginning of Temple. Is it called Temple? No, it's not called Temple. Shrine. I always mix up the name of this one. And the beginning of this fight is catastrophic because Arhan, I mean, for starters, I don't really understand on this stage why Arhan is running the Tracer, because AF.Blue has run very little Arhan Tracer throughout this tournament. It generally hasn't been their style to run Tracer compositions because neither Recry nor Arhan is really at the level of the other Tracers in the tournament. I mean, I think Arhan is probably around the same level as Guido and Esker, but plays it more aggressively, so therefore it requires more ability to pull off properly. More ability in the sense that there's more pressure on you to perform rather than it requiring more like game sense or awareness or something. But I think it's a more difficult role to play that aggressive Tracer than the way that Guido or Esker are playing it within their team. They're definitely more role-playing Tracers whenever they're on it. So Arhan here, you can see that he started up really aggressively over there and takes a bit of damage from Guido and Esker, instantly blinks over to the right-hand side, takes a little bit more damage. Oh, he hasn't actually taken the damage yet, but is just about to take damage. Blinks over to the right again, takes damage from Guido, recalls back almost instantly. This is all happening within like the first 5 seconds of the fight, and he's just recalled straight into Guido and Esker as well, and he just gets picked within the first 5 seconds. It's like a potato play from Arhan, just using all his abilities. I don't know whether the pressure got to him or whether he's just uncomfortable on Tracer or what, but at that point it's just lost. You've given so much room over to Guido and Esker, because now they can play aggressively without having to worry about the Tracer in the back. So the dive can come in without any worries, and they just kind of crush them at the beginning there. So I really don't understand, first of all, why they're running Tracer, but then Arhan kind of flubs it, where before and later on in this map as well, he actually has good play on Tracer, but he gave the ball away there, and the first capture is so pivotal to actually deciding who wins on control that I mean, you can't really afford to do it. The advantage was it was so early in the fight that they actually didn't give that much ultimate advantage over to Lunatic-Hai anyway. So you see, if we skip ahead just to the next fight, this is pretty awesome. So Lunatic-Hai are in control of the point. This is just the next engage coming out from AF.Blue. They've literally just captured, right? So it's a 1% from Lunatic-Hai. And AF.Blue are again doing this thing where Mano's hidden. You'll have just seen him there. And they're looking for an engage. And so this is classic Mano. This is how he likes to engage into a lot of situations. So he'll hide. He doesn't take much damage. He comes out. He chooses an angle where he's unseen up until the point where he's in your face. So again, really nice decision making from Mano for his engage. He jumps in, gets onto the backline here of Jaehong, there's Toby, and I think Esker's position around there as well. Yeah, there they are. Drops his bubble as well, and then just gets triple booped out of it. It's like Lunatic-Hai are the best team that I've seen at doing this as well, but every single time somebody aggresses into them, this is part of what makes them such a fantastic defensive team, is they have great coordination on. First, Toby comes in, boops him, then Zumba runs into him, like does the shift into him and boops him, and then Miro comes down and boops him again. And by the time they finish the triple boop, he's miles outside of his own bubble. So I'll just play it again and you'll be able to see this triple boop come through. And it's no fault of Mano's. He jumps, lays down his bubble, boop, 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 and he's miles away. He's absolutely miles away, and he's on 200 health because he's now just open to all of Esker's damage as well, and Guido because he's outside of his mech, and Zomba's just shooting at outside of his shield, sorry, and Zomba's just shooting at him. Donghyun can't get anywhere near him because he's been booped miles away. And it's just these small things. It's not even small. This is like a staple of playing this composition defensively, is being able to pull off these boops on, like, Winston is the main one, like a Dragon Blading Diva, who else? I don't even know. Occasionally, like, a Tactical Visor Soldier, if you can actually boop him out of position instead of just booping him nowhere. But it's massively effective. Okay, so he gets knocked out there, almost dies, just about manages to escape on 5 HP. In the meantime, Toby's 1v1'd Arhan, because, you know, just Toby things. He's an unbelievable Lucio. And then, as I was saying in my other video here of AF.Blue, and the style that they like to run with their super tight supports, this Pulse Bomb here just catches both of them. They play almost inside each other. They have very good positioning in terms of supporting each other, but I guess that doesn't really help if there's a Pulse Bomb, because you end up just running it into each other. Okay, so just skipping it forward a tiny little bit more after this replay of what happened to the Pulse Bomb. Lunatic-Hai, because they have more aggressive supports that tend to do more damage, tend to position themselves more aggressively. Toby's a very, like, the ethos he seems to employ with playing a hero that's very useful defensively on Lucio is that aggression is the best form of defense, offense is the best form of defense, and he will run into people and he's like trying to put them off before they actually get to his team, or actually doing damage to them to try and peel for the rest of his team, as well as doing all the boops and nice positioning. But he is very in your face as a Lucio. So he's managed to generate his ultimate way quicker than IDK. It's not just as well because they've been in control of the point and have won 2 fights. I mean, it is because they're also playing more aggressively, but that helps. The fact that they're in control gives them an ultimate advantage, which is something I personally dislike about control, but there you go. That's the way it is. And Jaehong as well is going to get his. So they realize that they have their support ult earlier. I think Toby's also got a lot of damage out on a ton of people, so they know that that's going to happen. So here there's just a bit of an engage coming out from AF.Blue, and Lunatic-Hai pop their sound barrier, and what they're aiming to do with the sound barrier is, because they've got it before the AF.Blue ults have got it, they're gonna push forwards, separate the back line from the front line, and then try and kill the front line. So they push forward with Esker's tac visor, and here's the back line. I can't actually see the outline of IDK, but he's probably, that's Arhan. I don't know, he's somewhere around there anyway. But they push back the back line, and Lucid's actually got the Transcendence because Mano was in it, because Miro was in his face. But he's not quite fast enough to be able to actually catch Donghyun here, who takes a ton of damage. He's discorded, and he dies, or rather he's taken out of mech. He's actually taken out of mech there, and then his health on his mech regens because Lucid was only a tiny bit too late. And then Mano takes a ton of damage as well and also dies. So both out of, like, they're out of the AoE effect of Lucid because they found this tempo sound barrier. So I'll play it again. So here they are. They know that the aggression's coming in from their front line. They're not going to use this to just shoot the front line, because then the back line would be able to push up and help them. So instead, they use their sound barrier and the fact that they're kind of invulnerable for a period of time to get aggressive into the back line, force them away, and then turn their attention onto the tanks again. And they've pushed Lucid out of position so that he can't actually help Donghyun or Mano. They get the kills on both of their tanks, essentially. I mean, once Donghyun's out of mech, that's as good as a kill. So they kind of kill both of the tanks. Lucid's wasted his Transcendence in that sense as well. And they are really able to kind of punish them there. So the okay, but the thing that happens afterwards, so they get the pick there onto Mano as well, and Lucid's already used his Transcendence, and so Jaehong uses his trance to try and clear up the rest of the team, because this is like still a fight that they could win, because he thinks that IDK by now is going to have his sound barrier. So they're trying to trade support ults out again and win the fight now that they've got both of the tanks down. But you'll see Miro bomb in at some point. Miro like jumps in trying to get damage onto them. Look, they pressure them all the way out there. And Miro jumps in, but Arhan manages to get the damage onto him. So they pop off the Transcendence thinking that IDK is going to reply and they're going to be able to get a fair fight, but actually AF.Blue are forced to disengage, run back. Miro kind of overextends and Arhan's already in the back and catches him. So Miro takes a lot of damage in the front line, jumps back, and then Arhan, I don't know why I'm pointing there, but you know what I mean. Arhan's then able to pick up the kill, and because they were forced to disengage here, that was actually it would have been the better decision anyway had IDK had the sound barrier. And IDK now is going to be able to re-engage with this and start the fight. And even though they've lost both of their tanks in this situation, the fact that they just got the pick on Miro, and Jaehong plays so aggressively there that he also gets picked off. Jaehong and Toby were super aggro because they wanted to force this sound barrier out of IDK. Once Jaehong's already invested that trance, he has to get the reply coming out from this sound barrier, otherwise they're in real dire straits. So they get the sound barrier coming out, and AF.Blue are actually able to reply and take it. Arhan does a ton of work in the back, but crucially, what I want to point you towards here as well is the fact that even when Lunatic-Hai know that this is gone, they focus Donghyun towards the end. So here's this fight, and Miro is a spawner, and he's going to come in, and he's not just trying to delay this, he's not just trying to take up the time. He is deliberately trying to demech Donghyun. And this is what I've seen all the top Korean teams doing recently as well, is that at the end of a fight, if they know they're going to lose it, their #1 priority, after kind of forcing support ultimates and stuff like that, is to, well, literally just after forcing support ultimates, is to demech the diva and then leave her alive, you know. So Miro comes in, and then so does Guido. And was that Toby doing a bit of damage as well? No, I think it was just Guido. And they demech Donghyun. And that's all they were going for there. You know, they take it up to 85%, but that 5% doesn't really make that much difference in the overall scheme of things. What they wanted was Donghyun out of the mech. So now Donghyun's in a sticky position, because if he stays alive, they are going to come back into him, and he's not going to have his mech available, and so he's going to be useless. But if he throws himself off, then he still gives an opportunity for Lunatic-Hai to get back in, because the spawns are so close. And the Korean teams will do this anytime that they either have the spawn advantage, i.e. they're like attacking Hanamura A, for example, or you know, any time on an escort map where you have the spawn advantage. Or they'll do it on control maps like this as well. So they demech Donghyun. Donghyun's forced to throw himself off because it would be far worse to stay alive in that situation. And look how fast Lunatic-Hai are here. Just immediately. I mean, they just speed boost straight in with all 6 of their players, with Donghyun still in the spawn queue. They've just got everybody back alive, and they're already in. Just insta repush because they know that Donghyun's down. And is this where they go for... What was this fight? I've actually forgotten what this one was. Is this the one where Donghyun goes for... Wait, I've lost myself now. What did they do? They came back in. Ah, yes, of course. So the primal rages are exchanged here. Mano pops his off and Miro pops his off as well. But then So they're just kind of feeling each other out at this point, seeing if anyone can get a better engage off their primal rage. So both teams are just kind of clashing with those. You can use that ult offensively or aggressively, or to make space for your team or whatever. So they just kind of both reply with one of those, but then Arhan goes down, so Lunatic-Hai engage. And here, okay, just before this one, so I've just wound it back a little bit here, and you'll see that as soon as Arhan goes down, there Arhan goes down, and Miro is going to get the heals, or he comes out of primal rage for starters, then he jumps in. He like engages with the rest of his team because they've got an opportunity now. So in he comes, he jumps through this gap in the window, and he's right up in Donghyun's face, and they want to try and take this one because, again, once you got your tracer down, you can really full commit to the fight. You know that there's going to be nobody in behind you, so you can attack. Almost exactly at the other side is Mano, who does pretty much the same. You can see his outline there. He jumped in from this way, and he is counter diving into their backline, which is what AF.Blue love to do. Normally they'd prefer it if Arhan was alive, and this is why I wonder why they're running the tracer in this situation, because they know that Guido and Esker are running like these counter DPS players, and it's so difficult to actually get flanks off if you're Arhan and sync it up with Mano so that the timing's perfect if you're running the tracer rather than the Genji, because you have to kind of make your way around fairly slowly before you can get in a position to actually fight them, and you're so vulnerable to being kind of body blocked by Guido or Esker in those situations, whereas if you just kind of hang around roughly similar positioning to where Mano is with the Genji, you can actually sync that in so much better. You get the Swift Strike, or you just kind of hop in from different directions. You've got more vertical mobility, you can dodge a little more. So that's why I liked the style when they were running the Genji soldier, but the tracer doesn't seem to get as much done unless Arhan really finds the perfect timing to be able to do it. It seems to require a lot more timing between Arhan and Mano, whereas the Genji Winston was easier to sync that up. So Arhan dies, Mano goes for the counter dive anyway, and manages to get a really good dive here onto Jaehong. So you can see that he jumped in through here, manages to land, does the damage over to Jaehong and Toby, I think, as well, although he's regenning it, and lays down his bubble. It does quite a bit of damage over to Jaehong, and manages actually to catch him there just before Toby uses his ultimate. But there was nothing that Toby could have done. That wasn't a misplay by Toby, because if we rewind a little bit, you'll see that Toby is only on 75%. This man builds ultimate like a god, so he was only on 75% here, and he actually builds up 20% in about 5 seconds just by throwing it at Donghyun. So here the mech is up, and Guido, Zunba and Toby are spamming Donghyun, and as soon as the matrix goes down here, oh, where is it? There it is. Okay, so like 2 seconds later, matrix still down, Toby is now at 80%, and he basically just over the course of the next 5 seconds, right, now he has his ultimate up, and that's just as Jaehong's about to die as well. So this is on a knife edge there. He was at 80%, he got 20% literally just by spamming at Donghyun after his defense matrix had gone down a little bit, and his aim is to be able to catch Jaehong with this support ultimate, and if he does, that's fantastic, because then Jaehong could chain it into one of his own, and they probably get the better end of this fight, because IDK is so far behind because he doesn't have as aggressive positioning as Toby does. Just doesn't go for those plays in the same way. But Mano's dive is so good. Jaehong goes down just before he can get it. Literally, it must have been like milliseconds beforehand. And Toby drops this ultimate that only hits the three of them, him, Miro and Esker. Lucid actually replies with his own Transcendence, which, you know, if you know all of the information, is a very weak pop, but you don't know all of the information, and so I don't think that that's a misplay in that sense. It's very difficult in the moment to be able to identify that Jaehong didn't get caught by the sound barrier, has gone down. The other guys of Miro and Guido, you're going to be able to focus down. Zumba didn't get caught by the sound barrier, and you're going to be able to demech him. So yes, they would have been able to win the fight without the Transcendence, but I don't think the information was actually there for Lucid to be able to make that call. And the reactions required to get a good like counter support ult off, you have to be very quick. So I don't think you can really hold that against Lucid. Although it would have set them up in fantastic position if he had managed to hold on to it. That would have been some big balls plays. So here we go. Here's the last fight of Nepal as well. So Lunatic-Hai looking to come in, and they make their way around here, and you'll see that Mano again is hiding in the corner over here, looking for a counter engage when he knows that they're going to come elephant. So he wants them to commit. Again, he likes playing against teams in general. AF.Blue likes playing against teams that are aggressive because their backline can handle it, and then Mano and Arhan get really good counter dives. But they're playing against Lunatic-Hai, who doesn't dive into them, doesn't take the first move, isn't aggressive anymore. They're a very defensive team, and so he's hiding in the corner, just waiting for a good opportunity. Arhan, again, you can see him just kind of flirting around the edges. He's trying to get into a position where he'll be able to help when that dive from Mano comes in. And I wonder if I can actually catch it. Mano, again, hidden over here, and Donghyun there waiting to go with him. Oh, there we go. I don't know whether you saw that, but he just flew past. Wonder if I can catch it. The outlines are so difficult to track in this game. Come on. There he is. He's just about to get ready. Oh, there. You can see him flying. Okay, there he is. Okay, so you believe me now. Mano goes for the jump. Donghyun follows him, and they look for this engage around the back. At the same time as Arhan's kind of flirting around with them, but again, he's on the tracer, he can't really get that done. He's a little bit scared of Eska, whereas with the Genji, he would have been able to work a little bit more around Donghyun's matrix. The two of them used to get matrix, as in the two of them, Mano and Arhan, used to kind of get matrix together when Arhan was running the Genji, and now they're coming in from separate angles, so they can't really. So Mano's idea with this jump is that he wants to get in early, kind of deny them position before they've actually set up, see if he can get a good engage. Donghyun's going to go for the matrix. Arhan, if possible, is going to get onto their backline at the same time. And just again, he gets triple booped. The triple boop that I was talking about before just comes in, where there's a boop from Toby, Zunba shunts him as well, and then Miro lands, who jumps back, again jumping defensively onto his own team, and Mano just slides down the gap. Mano just slides into the abyss. Bye bye, Mano. See you later, kid. So I mean, there's maximum efficacy out of the triple boop coming from Lunatic-Hai. They literally kill him within 2 seconds of his dive, and that was decent. Like, that was good peel as well from Donghyun. Arhan was actually just setting himself up to be in a decent position as well. But as soon as you lose your Winston like that, I mean, that's just game over almost immediately. So as a little unlucky perhaps from Mano, but that engagement, I'm not even sure whether it would have gone well in the beginning, because Arhan didn't look like he was in the greatest of positions. Again, they're running the Tracer rather than the Genji, which is what they normally do. Why, I'm not quite sure, but obviously they've read something into Lunatic-Hai, or perhaps they didn't, you know, because it didn't work in the end, but they definitely thought that the Tracer would be better. I can see why they would run it on Sanctum, not so much on Shrine. So Arhan actually comes up now from the back and forces the Transcendence. So I know I was waffling there for a second, but you'll see if you track Jae-Hong's health here as the sound barrier comes in. See there, you just saw all of his health deplete. That is Arhan coming up from the back, doing a lot of damage of the Jae-Hong. IDK pops the sound barrier. Everybody on his team gets the sound barrier at the same time as Jae-Hong pops his Transcendence. So that's pretty decent for both teams. Both soldiers doing a lot of damage, and both managed to demech their opposing divas as well. Recry doing it without the tactical visor, but Eska pops out his tactical visor. Donghyun gets in his face, ends up paying for it with his mech as well. And you see that here that, again, because Mano died, and now Donghyun's died because he's out of mech, basically the only people left in this fight are the backline from AF.Blue, like their classic backline of Lucid, IDK, and Recry. And again, they can't really be touched. Like, Zumba goes down Toby's already been picked by Arhan's Pulse Bomb, which is nice, but look at these AF.Blue players. Like, their backline is great. They can't really get them until they use ultimates to be able to do it. So again, Lucid, IDK just playing so well together, keeping each other alive. Recry's around there as well with his biotic field. They have great synergy between the AF.Blue backline, but Lunatic-Hai just don't care. They kill everybody else first and leave them. And they can't win the fight, you know. They just survive. They can't do anything. They can just survive. And then Miro pops off his Primal Rage and manages to pick them all up using that. So he kind of isolates them out with the juggle from his Primal Rage and manages to pick off each of the individual players on AF.Blue's backline. And at this point, it's gone. Like, at this point, the point is dead, and you're at 97%. They did, yeah, so that's crucial as well to note, is that they didn't flip it at any point here. So AF.Blue held on to, in the entirety of this fight, which, remember, began when Mano fell off the cliff, or was rather booped off the cliff. In the entirety of this fight, they haven't actually been pushed off. They haven't had it flipped by Lunatic-Hai. So they're ticking it up the whole time, you know, they're at 80% or whatever, but you really don't need to stall for that long. And at this point, when Miro uses his ultimate, so here, when Miro uses his ult, and they find the pick onto Lucid, then they find the pick onto Recry, then they find the pick onto IDK, at this point, the point is dead, right? Leave it. AF.Blue need to disengage. They need to cut their losses and come back in for the next fight, because if they do come back in for the next fight, Lucid's at 82%, Mano's going to have his ultimate. They can re-engage fairly well there. They've got a lot of stuff to work with, and they know that Lunatic-Hai don't have any support ults up, and they know that they don't have the Primal Rage up, so they're actually in a decent position. But instead, for God knows whatever reason, Mano decides that because Donghyun's on the point, they can probably take this 3v6, right? So Mano ends up popping off his Primal Rage here. He's in the back. I mean, just suicide at that point, you know, just die. Like, it's at 86%. You've got enough time to be able to re-engage there. Mano would have been able to die and come back in. But instead, the point ends up going over. Mano's already used his Primal Rage, gets focused down very quickly. I mean, this is hilarious. This guy just cannot catch a break, Mano. What happened to him last time? He got triple booped off the map. You know, before he was trying to engage, just got destroyed. Now, alright, goes for the lucky escape. He can spot the health kit. It's right there. You know, he's on 141 health. Guido comes in. Guido's right behind him at this point, right? Guido's on full health. He wouldn't take that health kit. Mano turns around, zaps him, so Guido loses health. Guido nicks the bloody health kit, doesn't he? What a cheeky little blighter. So Guido ends up getting the health kit, and Mano again denied. 141 health, so he just dies. So he doesn't even manage to get out with the dregs of the Primal Rage. So he's dead when they want to re-engage with Donghyun, which means that Arhan has to give his life. Arhan has to come in from the backside just to activate the overtime at 99%. Lucid has to zoom Yata up to the point as well just to keep it active because Arhan died so quickly. And Mano and Donghyun are miles away. I mean, it's just lost from a series of small mistakes coming out from AF.Blue and amazing defensive play coming out from Lunatic-Hai this entire map. And the Sombra play that came out from them in the the next 3 maps was amazing as well, and they absolutely had AF.Blue's number this entire time. It really did come down to like a clash of styles, this fantastic battle between these two really excellent top teams, but Lunatic-Hai just crushed them strategically. So I'm going to do the next 3 maps another time. Let me know if you like this. Bye.